How are you, brethren? Just like I promised, it is time to continue with the teachings on Jezebel. And in this moment, I'm about to do my sound check quickly. Again, this is just to be sure that you're able to hear me. So just give me a sec. This chapter is named Jezzabel, Baal's priestess. And it is an important part on the Synagogue of Satan, and I'm going to explain to you why. Alright then, that was my sound check. The picture I'm sharing with you today is this: Madonna's famous picture, dressed as Ishtar, Semiramis. And this is an important thing because Jezebel empowers the female figure. That is her job. And of course, we have prophecies, and Jesus never rejected the female figure. They were a part of Jesus' ministry. According to Paul's teachings, the female had limited authority, but according to tradition, but according to my own testimony, I can assure you that women are a very important part in the ministry because we lack men of courage. And since we lack men of courage willing to give their lives to serve Christ, Jesus is using women. So it's really important for you to understand that the Spirit does not differ between women from men, Jew, Greek, circumcised, uncircumcised. But beyond the physical body, you may see the spiritual fruit. And there's what today's teaching comes from. Jezebel is the usurping priestess that usurps power from the king. We're all kings and priests, but she was queen and priestess. This is why it's important to study her, because Jezebel usurps spiritual power and authority that was given to men by God. That's why it's important, because Jezebel is the adversary, the usurper, the sorcerer, the fornicary, the idolater, the adulterer, the great whore. And we have to be very careful, because being men of God, it is our duty to mark our dominion. But what do you mean by dominion? Well, not much dominion, but more like authority. It is to exert the authority God gave to us as kings and priests. But Jezebel wants to take away that authority. And what I see nowadays is many men that are being submitted to women. And there is where I show the Synagogue of Satan employs or uses Jezebel to neutralize ministries and usurp authority, even though this didn't happen with the Jews. I mean, the Synagogue of Satan itself, there's a structure where women don't play a part, but peripherally, they have authority in the evangelical Protestant church. So she becomes a priestess employed for the Synagogue of Satan. So you need to learn about Jezebel so that when you encounter her, you identify and know her. If there is a Jezebel, that is the Synagogue of Satan. As we get deeper and deeper in Jesus' period, we will learn the importance of this spirit, so you know the realm of the Synagogue of Satan's power. So let's begin. I want you to come with me to the scriptures. This is 1 Kings chapter 21, where Jezebel, she dealt with the prophet Elijah with her 450 Baal prophets and 400 prophets from Asherah. There were 850 prophets in total that he defeated in the fire test. when they said that if God was almighty, then may it fall fire from the sky. You may read this in Kings, though it is not the main subject. This is the main subject. Ahab, the king, Jezebel's husband, spoke to Naboth because Naboth had a vine or vineyard that was right next to Ahab's palace. And every time Ahab would look out his window, he would look at this beautiful view of that vineyard. So he told Naboth, give me your vine so I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is near my house. Notice that this obviously meant destroying the vine to turn it into a vegetable garden, and this couldn't be because a vineyard takes many years to give fruit. So technically it's like he told him, give me your inheritance passed down by your ancestors, and I'm gonna invest in a brothel for you to have an idea, a picture, or I'm gonna turn it into a parking lot. So it really requires a lot of discernment for you to understand that there was a law where you couldn't just give away the land that ancestors had passed on to you. Let's note and mention that he wasn't impious. So Naboth told him, God forbid me, I would give you my ancestral inheritance. So Ahab returned home upset because Naboth replied to him as he didn't get the outcome that he wanted. So his wife Jezzabel told him, why is your spirit filled with Saul and you do not eat? And he said to her, because I spoke to Naboth of Jezreel, and he told me, when I told him to give me his vineyard for money, or else, if you prefer, I will give you another vineyard for it. But he answered, I will not give you my vineyard. So Jezebel responded to him, are you not king of Israel? Get up, eat some food, and be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. So this is the thing about Jezebel, that she incites. She incites you to fight. She incites you to argue, to contend. She incites you to dishonest things. She's a bad counselor. Just like Ahithophel. Ahithophel went to Absalom when he was David's counselor, betraying him. And David prayed to God that he would confuse his counseling. Jezebel has this same characteristic. She incites to corruption. She incites idolatry, incites greediness, incites envy, incites gossip, incites division. She is an instigator. She is seductive. She is an usurper. I want you to observe this. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal. At the time, kings and queens shared a seal, more like a ring, which they would use as royal seal. This goes back straight to the Hittites. And this is a whole new sermon, really strong. When we finish with the historical context on Jesus' days, and we get into the scripture of the Synagogue of Satan, we're going to get into the political historical context. You're going to realize that the Hittites play a very important role in the Synagogue of Satan, because from them we get the concept and the model of the United Nations. And everything we see today in the world, Hittites involved and got confused with Edom. So once you understand how the world works, you're going to understand why these things are happening. They tell me, oh, Brother Fausto, I wasn't aware. Since we're not aware, this is why I try to teach you these things. Jezebel wrote letters and uses the king's seal on Ahab's behalf and sent them to the elders. So they were elders. Once again, she usurped his authority and sent the letters to the elders. Who were the elders? Once again, they were the principals that lived in Jezreel. So listen, I taught you before that the elders were the Sanhedrin, and they were corrupt. It was a position that they could bribe their way in. Their spots belonged to people in height, such big, socially wealthy, good-looking, and that they had a reputation, a high family, etc., etc. The creme of the creme, the best of the best, the elite, like local court at that time. So she wrote in the letters, proclaim a fast and seat Naboth in the head of the assembly. See two scowl opposite him and bring the charge against him, saying that he cursed God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death. So this is like she said, throw a party in Naboth's honor, and when he is there, pay two perverse, impious, lying men that would do whatever for money, and have them testify as witness that he committed blasphemy against God and the king. Which God? Because Jezebel's God was Baal. So this is key. If you remember back in the day, there was people of Israel wandering in the desert. They worshipped God Almighty, the I Am, and also Baal, Semiramis, Asherah, Milcom, Rapham, and all that. So, to which God? We'll see that maybe this was Mosaic law. The men of the city, the elders and nobles who lived in the city, did as Jezebel had sent word to them, just as it was written in the letters she had sent to them. They proclaimed the fast, seated Naboth at the head of the assembly, had the two scowls that came and sat and opposed him, and they brought a charge against Naboth in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth cursed God and the king. So they took him outside the city and stoned him to death. Because in the Sanhedrin, it was as simple as having two witnesses testify anything that was in the mouth of the 2 or 3 witnesses shall be word established. And this would lead to corruption, just like it happens in Honduras. Sanhedrin was corrupted in by history, and the only ones with the power were the ones in Sanhedrin. And what a coincidence that the elders were always opposing to God, because they were corrupt. They turned out to be pillars of the Synagogue of Satan, and Jezabel became an ally, and from this point used them, and they took advantage so that they would have more power, and they pleased her. With Naboth dead, after all, Jezebel did, Ahab finally had him return his vineyard. So this makes Jezebel a murderer. She did not care what she had to do in order to accomplish what she wants: power. Usurping power to obtain more power and gain goods even by killing. But her favorite method is seduction. And on the day that they killed her, when she gets killed, let me show you this. Let me show you this. On the day that Ahab dies, they kill Jezebel. She puts her makeup on, she waits for her husband, executioner, and she thinks that she will be able to seduce him. So she puts on her makeup, she did her hair, she bathed, she got dressed, all seductive mode on, and she stands by the window. And at the end, Ahab's executioner calls on the eunuchs and tells them, do you want to be on my side? Throw Jezebel. And they threw her out the window. Since they were eunuchs, they did not feel desire for her because she had no influence or sexual power over them. So let me tell you, brother, the spiritual message on this is only a man who is an eunuch in the spirit, that has spiritually overcome the spirit of seduction, sexual immorality, pornography, lust, masturbation, the filthy spirit of sexual appetite, adultery, fornication. If this is not dealt and conquered, you won't be able to handle Jezebel because it's too hard. Once Jezebel enthrones herself, you're most likely not going to be able to get her off your back. And she becomes one of the most powerful tools the Synagogue of Satan uses. They used to destroy evangelical churches, congregations. And look at this. Look at this in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 15. 15 through 17. Whatever is already been, whatever will be, has been before, and God will call the past to account. Things repeat. This is a story that keeps repeating itself, so everything in the Bible will repeat itself later on. And this is the reason why you need to read the Bible. Because this way you may anticipate yourself. This is in the book of the future. Knowing what happened, you will know what will happen. Looking back, you may almost guess or anticipate yourself to what will come. And this is one of the most important concepts that people are not getting. It's their loss, like for real. It is just their loss for the big ones. If you study the Bible widely, you'll understand the word much better. You will get deeper in the scriptures. So let's go back to the story. Story about Alexandra. Salome Alexandra. She is the most powerful Jezebel that there has ever been. And she installed Pharisees. So I want to get you there, all right? But before getting there, we need to check a couple of things that were happening back 200 AC. Because Alexander establishes on that period that the first Pharisees, and much more than just a political party, they became a force unit, politically powerful. They ruled over the people, and they were Jezebel's person arm extension. Because Jezebel not only manifests on women, but are men too. Differently, but in the same purpose. For example, Jezebel acts on derisive men, usually that they think that they're better than others. A person that likes to seduce you through flattery, trying to be liked by everyone, makes you feel safe because he's so strong, he's Superman-like. Jezebel acts through a man with mockery, attacking the prophet's character, just like the women. But the women attacks the prophet with falsery. Jezebel paid the two false witnesses. She turns false witnesses against you. She will scheme false testimonies to take away your credibility over the congregation. And usually Jezebel's spirit divides. It sections them. So they section. Whenever you identify a Jezebel, beware, because she divides, she seduces, she incites, she is a usurper. So be careful once you recognize her. Do not tolerate Jezebel. The Lord said, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel. You call her she who calls herself a priestess, by her teaching she misleads my servants into sexual immorality. And then eating food by sacrifice to idols. We are kings and priests. She wants to usurp priesthood from men of God. Salome Alexandra, helped the Pharisees and established them, and they took advantage from her and used her. Once they were throned, they disposed her, used her only to put her against her contendants because she was the most effective adversary. So let's read Maccabees first. Well, it's second Maccabees actually. Versículo 14. After 3 years, Judas informed that Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, having entered by the heaven of Tripoli, with great power and navy. Seleucus, in case you didn't know, was one of the 4 generals, and he was king of Syria. He had taken the country and killed Antiochus and Lysias, and that's how he took over Syria. But it was not Antiochus Epiphanes. During this war period, a man named Alcimus, who had been chief of priests, willingly decided to accept the ways of the non-believers in God. This is an apostate priest. He decided to tolerate the heathens cult, Gentiles that worshipped Zeus, Jupiter, heathen gods, Baal, etc. He accepted and he said, nah, a little ecumenism wouldn't hurt. So, what happened? He did this even though he knew that he wouldn't save himself and he wouldn't serve in the temple anymore. So he would never accomplish salvation anymore. He would become an apostate. But he would not serve in the temple. So he said, if I sin against God, it better be worth it. This is the mentality of many people nowadays that don't respect or fear God, and they just go against Him and they go straight for the bite and enjoy every bit, because that is as good as it will ever get. Alright, so this man here, he went and had a word with Demetrius, and he gifted him a golden crown, a palm tree, and some olive branches that grew in the fields next to the temple. So he did this serpent-like thing, flattering Demetrius. He did not ask anything in return. This was just to please him, to honor him. No, I'm just here to praise you. And he left. A while later, Demetrius invited Alcimus into one of his counseling meetings and asked him about what he knew about the Jewish moods and what were they planning. So Alcimus took advantage and he started his evil plan. He told that amongst the Jews there was a group of faithful people to God that were known as the Assyrians. The Assyrian realm, they were really serious about the law. These are the Maccabees. They were a priestly case of kings and priests of Melchizedek's priesthood that belongs to us. This is a mirror image. Kings and priests. Judges. Kings and judges. So he said, they took away my position as chief of priests, which I inherited from my ancestors, and this is why I left my country. And I came to your realm for 2 reasons, because I am interested in the king's affairs and because I care of the well-being of my fellow countrymen. So, due to the craziness of these warriors, because he was referring to the kings, priests, and warriors, the Maccabees, kings, priests, and warriors, and judges. We are going through a difficult situation, and this is why I beg your majesty to inform yourself properly about what's really going on, and please do something out of your goodness and good heart in favor of my poor country. I can assure you that as long as Judas Maccabees is alive, there won't be peace in my country. And when he finished talking, the rest of the counselors started accusing Judas too, because they hated him. So immediately, the king named Nicanor named him governor over Judea, who before used to be master of elephants for the army. He became an important, and he was given the order to kill Judas. So you see, Alcimus, he really was a clever man. He was planning on retrieving his priesthood through flattery and praises, and he had been expelled by the Maccabees for being impious. He was a very impious man. He was being an apostate. So he wanted to regain back the temple and install the Synagogue of Satan. Luciferian idolatry. This is Satan trying to go back one more time, and another time, and another time, and another time, and another time. The whole devil's purpose is trying his best to get back at all costs. So let's keep on reading because the Maccabees is very interesting books. I highly recommend you to read them. Here it is, versicle 1. Second Maccabees chapter 12. The Maccabees, okay, here it is. Maccabees had many conflicts for defending the temple's honor and the traditional religious ways from impious apostates. Maccabees were a priestly caste made from judges, governors, priests, but were also warriors with cape and a sword, and God would bless them and send heavenly armies to help them. Judas gathered up his army and left to Adullam's city. And the 7th day of the week he cleansed and purified themselves as usual, and they celebrated their Saturday. And because of urgency in time, soldiers left to pick the bodies of the fallen in combat, so that they would be properly buried with their relatives and family sepulchres. But underneath the dead one's robes and clothes, they found consecrated objects to the gods of Jamnia or Hamnia, objects that the law prohibited Jews to possess. In Hamnian, they worshipped mermaids, like Disney's Little Mermaid. That was Hamnia's goddess. I quite don't remember her name, but it is a mermaid goddess of Hamnia. So these men, underneath their clothes, they had some kind of charm, probably a small idol that was consecrated to Hamnia. So this is why they died. God left them because of Achan's sin. And they were lucky that not all the army died. Achan's sin in Joshua, I believe, chapter 7, the sin condemned the whole camp, and only because one man sinned, the whole camp died. Well, not exactly death, but the whole camp suffered the consequences. 26 men died in battle. And God spoke to Joshua and told him, stop complaining about these events because there is anathema amongst them. One of the crew took something and lied about it. And getting deeper and deeper, seeking God through the methods with the ephod, it was revealed to them, and Achan confessed, yes, I got some money, I got this beautiful Babylonical cloak, some pieces of gold and silver, and they got that from underneath his camp, and they burned everything. His family, he was stoned to death with burning stones, even his ship. So, the Synagogue of Satan contamined this with spiritual filth and sorcery. So I want you to see this. They all worshipped God because what was hidden was now discovered, and they made a prayer asking the Lord for forgiveness for the sin that has been committed. So Judas bravely demanded from his men to stay free of sin because they had already seen what could happen, for they saw with their own eyes what happened to the ones that failed and perished out of their own sin on idolatry. So after he gathered, he sent 2,000 silver coins to Jerusalem to offer a sacrifice over the sin, and this was just and noble. And he was aiming to resurrection. If he had not believed in the soldiers' resurrection, it would have been pointless praying for them. He knew that men that died in a pious way waited great reward. This sacrifice was holy and pious, and he did this to cleanse their sin.
Les perdonará su pecado. Ahora,
now, it says that his intentions were holy and pious. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions, or stoned with good intentions. And this becomes a cult honoring the dead, practiced by the Synagogue of Satan through the novenaries that are
por
with
expiación de los
offerings to
pecados.
redeem the dead's
Y
sins.
como Jesús ya murió en la cruz,
And since Jesus
ya no
died
es.
on the cross,
no es ni nunca fue
that
ni nunca será legal.
has never
No
been,
es
will
algo
never
que Dios
be legal
quiere.
or something true, and
Pero
it's
sigamos,
not
quiero
something
que
that the
veas
Lord
otra
wants
cosa.
us to do. But
Segundo
let's keep on
Macabeos
reading
6.
2 Maccabees 6.
Poco tiempo después,
Not long after the
el
king
rey envió a un
sent
anciano de la ciudad de
an
Atenas para
Athenian
obligar a los
senator
judíos
to force the
a
Jews to
quebrantar las
abandon
leyes de
the
sus
laws of their
antepasados y a
ancestors
organizar
and
su
live
vida
no
de
longer
un
by the
modo
laws of
contrario a
God.
las leyes de Dios.
Also
Para
to
profanar
profane
el
the
templo de
temple in Jerusalem and
buscar al
dedicate
dios
to the Olympian
Zeus,
Zeus,
y para dedicar el templo del monte
and
Gerizim a
the one in
Zeus,
Mount
como lo habían
Gerizim
pedido los
to
habitantes
Zeus
del lugar.
to host the
Aún para la
strangers,
masa del
as
pueblo
local
era penoso.
inhabitants won't be.
Difícil soportar tantos
This was
males. El
harsh
templo
and
era
utterly
escenario de actos
intolerable
desenfrenados y de
evil.
fiestas profanas,
It was evil.
orgías.
The Gentiles filled the
Las
temple with
prostitutas del templo
debauchery
obviamente llegaban al templo.
and
¿Y qué son las
revelry
prostitutas del
and
templo?
amused
Mujeres que
themselves with
tenían relaciones
prostitutes and had
sexuales
intercourse with
con
women,
dinero.
even in the sacred
Y
courts.
hacían actos abominables.
They would do
Hacían
forbidden
pasar la
things in the
semilla del
temple.
hombre por fuego.
They would, the altar was covered with
Es más
abominable
cochino de lo que
offerings that
imaginas.
prohibited the laws. I strongly believe that it was bannable with satanic rituals where these
creo
prostitutes would have
Absoluta y fervientemente, te lo digo. Yo
oral
creo
intercourse.
que había
to
ritos
say
satánicos tan
the
perversos
man's
que
seed
las mujeres practicaban sexo oral a hombres
seed
para usar el
to use
semen
it
como
for
sacrificio
satanic
a los
sacrifices
dioses, pasando la
to
semilla del
heathen
hombre por
gods.
fuego. Y eso está en la Biblia.
In the Bible, it reads,
Excepto que en vez de traducirlo como semilla,
instead
lo
of
traducen
seed,
hijos.
the word children
Reina Valera.
or
Pero
descendants.
Septuaginta,
In the Rivera
en
Bible,
griega,
originally translated
Hebrea,
from Hebrew,
dice
they would
semilla.
use the word seed.
Fiestas profanas organizadas
No one
por
could keep the
paganos que se
Sabbath or
divertían
celebrate
en
traditional
quemar las
feasts, not even to admit to be a Jew.
Y tenían
Moreover,
relaciones
at the
sexuales
monthly
con
celebration
prostitutas
in the
en los
king's
actos
birthday,
sagrados.
the Jews,
Además,
bitter
llevaban al
necessity,
templo
had to
objetos que
partake
estaban
the
prohibidos de
sacrifices, and its
Y
festival
el
with
altar se veía lleno de
Dionysius
animales que la ley
was
prohibía.
celebrated, where he
No se
compelled
podía
to
observar
march
el
his
sábado, ni
procession
celebrar las fiestas
wearing
tradicionales,
wreaths of
ni
ivy.
siquiera declararse judío.
So its cult offered to the
A la fuerza
king's
se veía la gente
deity
obligada a comer de
was
los
the
animales
Pharisees,
que cada mes
just like
se ofrecían
Caesar
en
did.
sacrificio, para celebrar
Following
el día
upon
del
a
nacimiento
vote,
del rey.
when they
O
would
sea,
celebrate
era el culto
Bacchus,
a la
god of
deidad
sex,
del rey.
a
Tal como
decree
lo hacían los
was
fariseos.
issued ordering
lo hacían
the
los
neighboring
sacerdotes.
Greek cities
Cuando
to
llegaba la
adopt
fiesta del dios
the same
Baco,
measures,
Bacchus,
obliging the
el dios del
Jews
sexo y del
to
alcohol,
partake the sacrifices
se
and
obligaba
wear
a la
ivy
gente a
branches
tomar
in their
parte
heads in the
de la
shape of a
procesión,
crown.
con la cabeza
In
coronada de
Rome,
ramas de higuera.
a little
Esto es
later,
algo importante.
in other impious emperors'
En
government,
Roma,
they would carry a
más
chariot.
tardecito, el reino de los
It
otros
looks very much
antiguos
alike the ones
emperadores.
that are used
Los
in
romanos
Passover
andaban con una
celebration.
carroza, muy
They
parecida a
would
la que ves
use
en la Semana
to
Santa, que andan desfiladas.
be mobile
Ves
altars,
a los-
altars with a
chicos,
fire and incense,
Antes eran unos
And
altares móviles, donde llevaban una llama,
basically
un altar con una
mobile
llama y
altars,
con
and they had a fire and
Tenían-
incense, and they would like tutum, 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 tum, tum.
Venían marchando
They would be
y
marching
venían con 6 o hasta
with
12
8
o
or
más
12 or even more
soldados al frente
soldiers
y atrás.
marching in the
Y
back
la
and
gente que
front.
estaba ahí en la calle
And the
estaba
expectant
obligada
people
a
in the
orar
streets,
al
they were
César.
forced to
Y le
praise
decían,
Caesar.
"Honra al
They would be
César".
like, praise Caesar.
Entonces la persona tenía que
They would
agarrar
grab
el
incense
y echárselo al
and
fuego
throw it into
y
the
decir,
fire and praise Caesar,
"El César,
or
el
whatever
César
they
es
were saying.
Dios", o qué sé yo. Si tú no lo hacías,
But
te
if they
mataban.
didn't do that,
Ahí nomás,
they would be
un
killed
perro en la calle.
right then and there.
Y Jesús
in the
menciona
streets.
eso.
And
Porque
Jesus mentions
cuando
in
tú lees en
Revelations,
Apocalipsis,
if
Jesús menciona,
I'm not mistaken,
si no me equivoco se llama
his
Demetrio,
name was Demetrius.
no importa.
Well,
El tema
doesn't
es
matter.
que Jesús menciona a un
Jesus
fiel
mentions a
testigo,
loyal
porque él
witness
estaba parado en un
that was
coliseo y
standing in the
decía,
middle of the
"Honrar a
Colosseum
César".
and refused to praise Caesar.
Y lo matan por eso.
And he was killed because of this.
Jesús habla muy bien de él.
Jesus speaks good things about him.
Antipas.
Antipas.
Está en Apocalipsis 2.
It reads in Revelation chapter 2,
Cuando la carta de la iglesia del Pérgamo dice, yo conozco tus obras,
I
¿dónde
know
moras?
where you
¿Dónde
live,
está el
where
trono de
Satan
Satanás?
has
En
his
Pérgamo estaba
throne.
el trono de Zeus. Satanás
Satan's
es
throne,
Zeus.
Zeus's throne. Satan Zeus is Satan.
Pero retienes mi nombre y no
You
has negado
remain
mi
true
fe.
to my name,
Ni
and you
aun
do
en
not
los
renounce
días
your
en que
faith in me.
Antipas, mi testigo
Not even in the
fiel,
days
fue
of
muerto entre
Antipas, my
vosotros.
faithful witness, who was put to death in your
Porque era la
city,
ley del César.
where Satan lives. On these
Allí
days,
los cristianos
Christians
morían todos
would
los días
every day
por
die
negarse a
for
adorar
refusing to
a
praise
Satanás
Satan and
y
the
a los
fools
hombres
serving
que
Satan,
servían a Satanás, a
Caesar,
los césares, a los
the
reyes,
kings,
etc.
etc.
Versículo 8. Por
Verse
instigación
8.
de los habitantes
Following
de la
upon a
ciudad
vote
de
of citizens,
Ptolemaida, se expidió un
Ptolemy,
decreto para
a
que en las
decree
ciudades
was
griegas
issued
se
ordering the
separaran
neighboring
los
Greek
judíos contra los
cities to
judíos,
adopt
y
the
se les
same
obligara a tomar parte
measures,
en la comida de los
obliging the
animales
Jews to partake sacrifices, for example, pork,
ofrecidos en sacrificio.
and putting
Los que
to
no
death
aceptaran las costumbres griegas
those who would not
serían
consent to adopt the customs of the Greeks.
degollados. Todo esto hacía prever la calamidad
It
que
was
se aproximaba.
obvious.
Y esta es la característica
Therefore,
principal
that
de las
disaster
sinagogas.
had come
Te
upon them.
obligan
This is a
a
characteristic
adorar
of the
a su
Synagogue
Dios.
of Satan.
Si no te
If you don't
rechazan,
worship
te
their God, they
persiguen,
hunt you
te
down,
matan,
they
te
persecute you,
expulsan.
they force you, they
Porque
kill
la
you.
humanidad
Because
se ha convertido en
humanity
la
has
única
become
manada
a pack of
de
sheep
ovejas
that slay the
que
sheep
mata a la
that
oveja que no
refuse
hace lo
to
que
do
Dios dice.
as they say.
En la
In
naturaleza,
nature,
las
in a
ovejas,
pack of sheep,
una oveja se escabría, las
one
demás
goes
no les
stray,
importa,
they really don't
no
mind. They
saben
just
lo
carry
mismo.
on with being
Se
their
la come
sheep,
loco,
and
se
whatever
la
they
come.
do, the sheep gets eaten by a wolf,
Pero hoy
maybe,
en
I don't
día,
know. But today, humanity
La humanidad
Humanity
es
is the
la única
only
manada
one who slay
mata
and kill the sheep
a la
that goes
oveja
the other
que se
way.
va en dirección
And why?
del pecado. ¿Por qué? Porque todos
Why?
quieren que se vayan
Because
juntos.
they
Es
all
un sentido
want
como que
together to go to hell.
esa
And
es
this is
la
a common
característica de los
thing
liberales.
with
Y me
liberal
voy a meter un poco
political
de
party.
política, ¿no?
I'm
Los
going to get a
liberales,
little bit of politics.
la izquierda comunista
The
liberal
progressive
progresista que
communities
está metida en
left
todo el mundo.
that
¿Cuál es la diferencia entre el progresista y comunista? El
exits
comunista
and
te lleva
explain the
solo
world
a la
that this
guerra
is the difference
civil,
between
boom,
communism
choque
and
social,
progressive.
boom, comunismo.
It takes you
Los
straight to
progresistas lo
civil
hacen
war.
poco a poco.
Society collapses and boom,
Okay.
communism. And progressive slowly, easy with the laws, here and there, but slowly with the same result. So we, the high progressive
Entonces, ahorita,
communist
la mentalidad de la
mentality
colmena
wants to
izquierda,
force you to
progresista
do
o
what they
comunista,
want you to
liberal,
do.
quiere obligarte
And
a que tú hagas lo que ellos quieren.
if you
Y
are
si
a
tú
part
eres
of the
parte
opposing
de la
party,
oposición, te acusan a ti
they will
de hacer lo
accuse
que
you of
ellos
doing
hacen para
exactly what
arrastrarte.
they
Todos
do,
vamos
so
juntos.
they drag you and
Si
we're
ellos
like
son
all in
corruptos,
this
te acusan
together.
a ti de
If they're
corrupto
corrupt,
para que
they're accusing you of
normalizar
you
la
being
corrupción.
corrupt, so that they normalize corruption.
Es una
That's
manipulación.
manipulation.
Te
They
obligan a ti a creer que tú
force
eres
you to be a
parte.
part of the group accusing
Te
you,
acusan a ti de
of
lo que ellos
exactly
son
what they
culpables
do.
para tratar de cohibirte
and in that way
que te
silence
calles
you
y que
and
no te
force
opongas.
you to not to
Todos somos
oppose.
culpables de lo mismo.
So we're all guilty of
Esa
the same thing. This
es
is
la
the
actitud
synagogue
de aquí,
of
de la sinagoga
Satan,
de Satanás. Es querer obligar a
wanting
todos que todos
everyone to be
participemos y
a
no
part.
tengamos. Aquí
If
no
we're
hay
not all
nadie.
in it,
Eso fue lo
we
que
will
hicieron
kill
los
you.
ángeles caídos.
This is
Los
what the
ángeles que
fallen
bajaron en
angels did.
16
They made a
pactaron
pact
en el monte Hebrón
in Mount
de que
Hebron,
todos
and all
200 eran
heads
cabezas
of
de
200.
Todos
This means
iban.
that each
Cabezas
one
de
of
200
them
significa
had
que cada
200s
ángel
at their
tenía 200
command.
eran
So
cabeza de 200.
they were heads of
Entonces,
200s.
Todos
So
ellos,
they
ni
all
uno
made
se
a
iba a echar
pact
atrás.
where none, a single one would back out.
Pactaron
They made a
con
pact, an
imprecación
oath, a
de que
covenant,
ninguno se iba a echar para
that
atrás
they
a lo que
wouldn't
iban a
back out on what
Por
they
eso se llama
had
el monte
planned
Hebrón.
to
Y
do.
dentro de poco
And
vamos
that
a
is
llegar al
why
monte
it's
Hebrón.
called Mount Hebron.
La sinagoga
And when
de
we get to
Satanás
Mount Hebron,
es
we will
importante.
finish
Cuando ya
the
entremos
Synagogue of
al
Satan. When
vas
you
a darte
get into
cuenta de dónde viene el
Islam,
nombre
you will
Al-Qaeda.
realize why the name
Así como
Al-Qaeda
esto,
comes
para
from,
que te des cuenta
ISIS,
a
and
quién
everything. So you
veneran.
realize who they
El
worship,
descaro de la
and
sinagoga
how
de Satanás
the Synagogue
de
of
promover
Satan
a
is
sus dioses
promoting their God
frente a tus
right under our
países. Tú ni
noses.
siquiera sabes.
You don't even know.
No, a mí me dijeron que Al-Qaeda
No, I was told that
significa
Al-Qaeda
guerra
meant
santa.
holy
Sí, ellos
war.
van a inventar aquel montón de mentiras
This
que
is all
dicen.
made up stories
La
that have been told.
etimología
The
es
etymology
es
is
una de las
one
ciencias
of the
que te
sciences I
recomiendo, aparte de la historia.
recommend
Para entender las
besides
escrituras,
history.
la
For you to
etimología,
understand the scriptures,
la ciencia
science
de la raíz de
of
las
the
palabras
words,
y
the
de los
names
nombres
and roots,
y la historia.
history. This is
Te
going
va
to
a
help
ayudar
you a lot.
muchísimo. Entonces,
So,
seguimos con las
we
escrituras.
continue on the scripture.
Versículo
we
10.
continue with the
Así, por
scriptures.
ejemplo, dos mujeres
Verse
fueron
10.
llevadas al tribunal por
Thus,
haber
two
hecho
women
circuncidar a sus hijos.
were arrested for having
Después de
circumcised their
conducidas
children.
públicamente
They were
por la
publicly
ciudad, con los
paraded
niños colgados de los
about the
cuernos,
city with their babies
los
hanging with their
arrojaron desde lo
breasts,
alto de la muralla.
and they were
Otros,
thrown down the
que
top
se
of the
habían
city
reunido
wall.
en cavernas cercanas para
Others,
sembrar escondidas
who had
el
an
sábado,
assembly in nearby
habiendo sido
caves
denunciados
to
ante
observe
Filipo, fueron
the
quemados
seventh
como
day in secret, they
pues
were
por
betrayed prayed to Philip and they were burned to death. in their respect for the holiness of that day, they refrained from defending themselves. I now urge to these people that read this book not to be disheartened by these misfortunes, but consider these punishments as one, not for the ruin, but for the correction of our nation. This is a sign of great kindness to punish the impious promptly instead of letting them go for long. Thus, dealing with other nations, the sovereign Lord patiently waits to reach the full measure of their sins before punishing them. So, he has decided to deal differently with us, so he awaits for the impious to allow them carry, and this cup of wrath fills with his wrath falling upon them. But the ones he loves, he disciplines. So, this is why this pious says. Paul said this. It is a biblical principle. Let me see. It is a biblical principle that our sins have reached fullness, said by Paul. He does not reject anyone.
Pero hermano Fausto, Dios es amor. Dios no castiga a nadie, Dios no rechaza a nadie.
Oh, Brother Fausto, God is love. God doesn't punish. No. Yabi. I don't know what God do you mean or what God do you believe in. Probably the Synagogue of Satan's God, perhaps. This is why I'm teaching you this, for you to know who is he and for you to understand his character. You should read Hebrews. God punishes the one he loves. If he does not punish you, then he doesn't love you. And his wrath will fall upon you eventually, and boom, you will be cut off at once. So believe me that it's better to have calamity, troubles, and difficulty if you turn your back on him. This is all really for you to come back to him, and this is really important. This is a lesson in Maccabees 2. Simon mentioned above as the informer about the funds against his own country. Okay. Let me see. Second Maccabees 4. I read this already. Okay, it's here. Second Maccabees 4. Simon mentioned above as the informer about the funds against his own country slandered Onias, the one who incited Heliodorus and instigated the whole miserable affair. Do you remember the story about the temple where the temple's treasure god sent a warrior with a golden armor and hit Heliodor and he almost died? He was unconscious, so they prayed for him. A high priest offered a sacrifice over him, and 2 angels touched him, and he was healed. Onias, the high priest, offered a sacrifice, but Simon was unsatisfied and wanted to, he dared to brand and shimmer against the government. The man who had the benefactor of the city, the protector of his compatriots, and he was a very jealous defender of the law. When Simon's hostility reached such pity that murders were being committed by one of his headmen, Onias was the opposition and was serious, and Apollonius, son of Memphis, the governor of Syria and Phoenicia, was abating Simon's wickedness. This means that Simon was protected by a military chief, so that the resource to the king was not an accuser of his compatriots, but he was looking to the general and particular good of all the people. He saw that without royal attention, it would be impossible to have a peaceful government, and that Simon would not desist from his folly. But when Seleucus died, when Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, succeeded him on the throne, Onias' brother, Jason, obtained the high priesthood by corrupted means. This was a corrupted emperor whose idea was to profane the temple and the pigs sacrificed at the altar, as well as the Zeus' statue in his image in the holy place. The statue was the beginning of the black hue Saturn's black
Entonces,
cube,
el arca del
which is
pacto
represented
representa
by
la
the
roca
Ark
de
of the
Cristo,
Covenant.
y entonces
So,
ellos cuando ya
the
pierden
Ark
el arca del pacto
represents
instalan
the
un negro de
boulder
Saturno,
of
que
Christ.
es la roca
And
negra, que es
once
Satanás, la
they
diosa
lose the
Diana, la
Ark,
figura de
the
Satanás,
covenant they establish as
y Nana,
the black cube of
el
Saturn,
anticristo.
which is Satan's black rock, which is also the goddess Diana in
Entonces,
female adversary shape.
Antes Jasón se
And
llamaba
finally,
Jesús,
the Antichrist.
pero él se
Jason
cambió el nombre de Jesús a
used
Jasón, gracias a
To
Dios.
be named Jesus,
Hermano
but he
de
changed his name
Onías
to
compró
Jason.
con dinero el cargo de sumo
What a
sacerdote.
relief.
Esa es la
Jason
característica principal.
bought his position with money.
Jasón
This is
compró
called simony.
el cargo del sumo
Or
sacerdote.
simony.
Eso se llama simonía.
He
Eso lo
bought
practicaban los papas.
his position.
Los papas, por ejemplo,
This is simony.
los Borgias,
This is what
Borgias
popes
eran
would
una-
do
una-
to get
una
their popedom
raza,
position, like the Borgias.
aristócrata,
They were an
de la
aristocratic race of
que compró
nobility
el papado.
that
Hubo tres
literally
papas.
bought the papacy
Entonces, eso se llama
with 3
la
popes.
simonía por Simón el mago. Simonía de Simón.
And this
Y da
is
la
called simony,
característica que Simón se llama este
named
Simón.
after Simon the magician. And what a funny coincidence that this priest's name is Simon.
Hermano de Onías, el sumo sacerdote. Antes Jasón
Onias'
se llamaba
brother
Jesús, compró
Jason
con dinero el cargo del
obtained
sumo sacerdote.
the high
En una
priesthood
entrevista con
by
el rey prometió
corrupt
darle
means.
11,880 kilos de plata. ¿Cómo
In an interview,
Más
he
otros
promised the king
2,640
360 talents of silver,
Se
as well
comprometió además
as
a pagar
80
casi
talents from
5,000
another
kilos de
source of
plata
income.
si le autorizaba establecer
Besides,
por cuenta propia un
He would
gimnasio
undertake to
y un
pay
centro de
150
deportes
more
y
if he was given
y
the
si daba a
authority
los
to
habitantes
establish
de
a
Jerusalén
gymnasium of
derechos
Jews center
ciudadanos de Antioquía.
to
Aquí
enroll
entra las
Jerusalemites
iglesias
as citizens of
gimnasio,
Antioch.
con canchas de tenis,
Here is where we
el
have
culto al
churches
físico, el
that
culto
have
al
gyms,
ejercicio,
tennis courts,
culto al
physical
cuerpo,
exercise
a la
courts,
carne.
to the body,
Entonces es
to the
importante que lo
flesh.
vayas viendo en la sinagoga de Satanás de hoy.
This is
Por
today's
eso Pablo decía el
Synagogue
ejercicio
of
de poca
Satan.
brecha. Versículo 10.
This is why
El
Peter
rey
would
le
say that
concedió lo que
exercise
pedía
is
y
of
desde que
little
Jasón
profit.
tomó posesión del cargo, fomentó, entre otros,
When
cinco
Jason
patriotas.
received the king's
La manera
approval
griega de
and
vivir.
came into the
¿Cuál
office,
era la
he
manera griega de
immediately
vivir?
initiated
La manera
his
olímpica, la
compatriots
manera
to the
del
Greek
culto al
way of
cuerpo.
life, the
Culto a
Olympical
la carne del
way.
ejercicio. Renunció
to
a
live
los
in the
privilegios
flesh.
que bondadosamente los reyes habían concedido a los judíos por intercesión
He
de
set
Juan,
aside his
padre
royal concessions
Eupolemo.
granted to the Jews
Este Eupolemo
by the
es el mismo
mediation
que
of
hace
John,
un tratado de amistad
Father
y pactó con los
Eupolemus.
Jasón
Eupolemus
suprimió
would
además
later
las
go on
costumbres
to an
conformes con la
embassy
ley,
to the
e
Romans
introdujo
to
otras
establish
contra
friendship and
Israel.
alliance
Se
with
apresuró a
them.
construir un
He
gimnasio
set aside
en
the
la
lawful
ciudad
practices and
e hizo que los
introduced
hombres
customs
más
contrary to the law.
sobresalientes se dedicaran a los ejercicios del gimnasio.
With perverse
La
delight,
extrema
he established a
maldad del
gymnasium
falso
and
sumo
every
sacerdote
foot of the
Jasón,
citadel,
que antes
where
se
he
llamaba
introduced the
Jesús,
noblest young men to wear the
hizo que
Greek
por
hat,
todas partes se propagara la
He
manera griega de vivir y que
propagated the
aumentara el
Greek
deseo
way
de
of
imitar
life,
lo
and
extranjero.
exactly
Eso
this
es lo
is
que
what
Dios
God
quiere, que
forbids.
nosotros seamos como las
What
demás
does
gentes,
exercise have
que
to
nos
do
santifiquemos.
with the
Gimnasio.
church? Nothing to
¿Qué
do.
tiene que ver el templo
And
con
this
el
right
gimnasio?
here is
¿Qué
why
tienen
I
que ver los
argue
cristianos
about
con
churches
gimnasio?
adopting customs like
¿Qué tienen que ver los
dancing
cristianos con las
and
discotecas?
jumping
Las
and
cristotecas, y ahora todo es
sweating.
lo mismo, el
It's
culto a la
like
carne,
people,
el culto a
exactly what
bailar,
people would do in a
el culto a
disco.
danzar, el culto a sudar,
Christian
el culto a la
discos.
carne.
This is all a call to the flesh.
Hay iglesias que hacen maratones.
Jumping.
Hay iglesias que hacen
Even though
partidos
it
de
says
fútbol. Por
that
Dios.
Peter said
Eso es lo mismo.
that
Es la sinagoga
there
de
was a
Satanás.
little
¿Estás
use in
entendiendo por qué te
exercising.
leo estas cosas? Te
Exercising
estoy mostrando los
piety.
atributos y las características
This is
y los aspectos,
useful.
lo que quieras llamar,
This is
de la
useful
sinagoga
in
de
life,
Satanás para que te
like the
fijes
other life.
cómo es que son tan
But
impíos
today's
hoy en día.
Christians
Cuando
plan
Pablo te
soccer
dice el
games
ejercicio
and
del
are you
poco
understanding?
aprovecha. Antes
This is the
ejercer la
synagogue of
piedad,
Satan.
que eso sí
For
beneficia
this
en esta
reason,
vida, como en
they
la otra.
found
Pero
themselves
la
in serious
cristianos de
trouble
ahora planean
and
partidos
very
de fútbol,
people
partidos de
whose
qué
manner
sé
of
yo.
life they emulated
¿Estás entendiendo?
and to
Es
whom
la
they
sinagoga
desired
de
to
Satanás.
imitate in everything became their enemies and
Pero
oppressors.
precisamente por eso se vieron en una situación difícil, grado las glorias de los griegos. Pero
Stop
precisamente,
making
aquellos mismos a
alliances
quienes
with the world.
se propusieron
The
seguir,
world
copiar en todo, fueron
is
después
your
sus enemigos,
enemy.
verduгos,
It
porque
will
eso es lo que
kill you.
Satanás hace.
You can't
Violar la
reconcile
ley
the
divina no
irreconcilable.
te va a dejar sin que te
You
castigue
can't
Dios.
have
Y además el
Jesus
diablo
and
paga
then
mal a aquel
go
que
to the
le sigue.
disco.
No hagas alianzas con el diablo. No hagas
The
alianzas con el
demons
mundo porque
will
el mundo es
kill
tu enemigo,
you.
te va a matar. No puedes tener
Stop making
no
alliances with
reconciliable
the
y
devil.
irreconciliable.
It will
No
kill you.
puedes tener
You
a Jesús
can't
y después
eat
ir al abismo.
on
Porque los
God's
demonios
table
te
and
van a
Satan's
matar.
table
No
at the
puedes comer
same
de la mesa
time.
de
You
Dios y
can't
de la mesa de
drink
Satanás.
from God's cup
No puedes
and then
beber
drink
de la
from Satan's
copa de
cup.
Cristo y
You
después querer beber de la
can't
beber de la
make
copa de Satanás.
alliances
No puedes
between
hacer
what's
alianzas
holy
entre lo santo y lo profano,
and
entre el
profane.
espíritu y la carne,
The
porque son
spirit
opuestos.
and flesh are
Debiste haber
opposites.
leído la Biblia.
You must read the
En Romanos
Bible.
8, léelo. Son
Romans
contrarios, el
8, read
espíritu y la
it.
carne.
They're contrary, spirit and the flesh.
Pero los cristianos son genios
But Christians are
en
experts
convencerse a sí mismos
in
de lo que
convincing
hacen.
themselves
No,
being
hermano.
able to do the
Todo lo que se
impossible.
hace en amor.
Everything we do in
Todo
love,
lo que hagamos lo
we
hagamos
do
para la
for the
gloria de
glory
Dios.
of Christ. Ha.
Ay, sí. Entonces,
So,
al celebrarse en Tiro,
at the presence
en
of the
presencia
king,
del rey,
they
los
had
juegos
this
que tenían
games.
lugar cada 4 años,
Vile
el
Jason
malvado
sent
Jasón, hermano de
representatives. He was
Onías
part of the last
era de los
priests, the
últimos
Sadducees,
sacerdotes,
Sadducees, yes.
sí, sadoquitas,
The Sadducees from Sadok,
de Sadoc,
descending
de los descendientes de Sadoc, el
the
sacerdote de David, que
Sadducees,
después se convirtió en el sumo
who was
sacerdote de
priest,
Salomón,
he
que
anointed
ungió a
Solomon,
Salomón y que Salomón lo
and
hizo
generation
sacerdote,
from
y generación tras
generation,
generación tras
they
generación
were
eran la
a
raza
priestly
sacerdotal de los saduceos,
case, they were
eran
men of
verdaderos
God.
hombres de Dios.
So,
Bueno, hasta que se
that used to
corrompieron
be
gracias a Alexander.
until they got
Cuando
corrupted by
Apolonio, hijo
Alexander.
de Menesteo, dice aquí, miren lo que pasa.
So,
Perdón, al celebrarse en Tiro,
in the
en presencia del
presence
rey, los
of the
juegos que
king,
tenían lugar cada
Vile
4 años,
Jason
el
sent
malvado Jasón,
representatives
como
of the
representante de
Antiochians
Jerusalén,
of
algunos
Jerusalem
en calidad
to
de
bring
ciudadanos de Antioquía,
300
los pueblos,
silver
y
drachmas
los
for the
300
sacrifice
monedas de
to
plata para el
Hercules.
sacrificio al dios Hércules. Jasón les dio dinero
Jason
para que
gave them
sacrificaran
money
al
to
dios
sacrifice,
pero ellos
over for
mismos
Hercules.
pensaron que no convenía enviar
but
ese dinero en
the bearers themselves
sino
decided
más bien
that the
en
money
otros
should not be spent on
y
the
así el
sacrifice,
dinero destinado
as it was not
por
right,
Jasón
but to use
para
for
el
other
sacrificio en
purpose.
honor a Hércules
So, in
fue dedicado
contribution meant
por
for
quienes
the
lo llevaron
sacrifice
a
to
equipar
Hercules
para
by the
Cuando
sender
Apolonio,
was in
hijo de
fact applied to the
Menesteo, fue a Egipto para
construction
asistir
of
como delegado a la coronación del
temples
Metor,
by those who
su
brought it.
Antíoco, que
When
Filemón,
Apollonius, the
Filometor,
son of
era contrario a su
Menestheus,
política y se
was sent to
preocupó por
Egypt
tomar la
for the
ciudad.
coronation of the
Por eso
king
se dirigió a las-
Philometor, Antiochus learned from him that the king was
Y de ahí marchó a
opposed
Jerusalén.
to
Jasón
his policies.
y
He
la
took his
ciudad
measures
hicieron un
for
gran
his own
recibimiento a la-
security. So,
y
after
aclamaciones.
going to
Después
Joppa,
Antíoco acampó con Jerusalén.
he proceeded to
Muy bien,
Jerusalem.
hermanos, creo que hasta aquí dejo
Alright,
este video.
alright, brothers.
En la noche te voy
I
a
think
hacer
this
la
is
otra
it for
parte
this video.
para que
I'll make
lleguemos
one
a
tonight about Alexandra.
y puedas
And
darte cuenta cómo
we
funciona la sinagoga
we
de
can
Satanás.
get a little bit more into detail about how the Synagogue of
Estoy mostrando
Satan
las características de la
works.
sinagoga de
I am
Satanás para
showing
que
you
te
the characteristics
apercibas de
so
ello.
that
¿Sí?
you
Entonces,
may see them.
cortamos hasta aquí.
So this is as far as it
Dejamos
goes.
este capítulo aquí.
This
En la
is
noche
this
te hago el
chapter
próximo.
till here.
Lo vamos a avanzar
We're gonna
a
go a little bit
matacaballo
into
a los días de
Jesus'
Jesús, que
days.
son importantes
We're gonna
para
get
que
further
veas
into
qué
it.
fue lo que
So
Jesús hizo.
see you
Que sea
tonight. Be
bendecido en el nombre de
blessed.
Jesús.
In Jesus'
Hasta
name.
pronto. Gracias.